world, beset upon by pandemic, natural disasters, and lunatic leaders, one YouTube channel rises to the challenge and exposes the stark truth. Did a master Bitcoin trader get completely wrecked due to incompetence and lose over $70 million of client assets? Were 4 average members on a Facebook group powerful enough to knock a crypto giant that claims to have one of the finest and most secure cryptocurrency trading systems in the world, so far off his game? Was the entire wipeout of client accounts an elaborate exit scam to defraud hundreds of investors of their funds and slither away into the night? Could the whole thing have been just a huge Ponzi scheme, perpetrated by a cryptocurrency conman to swindle over $70 million from hundreds of faithful clients? Or is this latest chapter in the MG Saga some sort of elaborate loyalty test concocted by a delusional narcissist? Hundreds of MG clients around the world are left asking themselves these and other questions in the wake of what could very well be one of the world's largest cryptocurrency frauds ever perpetrated to date. Coming to this YouTube channel is the stark truth.
About a week ago, MG put out a message in his member update group on Telegram in which he blamed a Facebook group and its creators for causing him to be so stressed out and distracted that he was no longer able to function as a competent cryptocurrency trader, and then casually stated that all client accounts had been wiped out because he had lost over $50 million of client assets. He nonchalantly mentioned that other Bitcoin traders had been wiped out before, so this is no big deal. We're here to disagree with this assertion, because it is a big deal to all of the clients that have had their hard-earned assets completely wiped out. Hello, I'm Georgia Stark, and this is The Stark Truth. Over the next few videos, we will try to make sense of what has occurred and hopefully shed some light on the stark truth of the MG Wipeout. Recently, I became aware of a client that has been with MG since May of last year and was subjected to brutal attacks by MG while completely unable to withdraw from their account. As a result, they have been evicted from their home, had their credit ruined, and are about to have their car repossessed and face being evicted once again. In short, this client's life has been completely ravaged since joining the MG program. I was able to speak to this individual and ask him to share his story with us. For reasons I cannot completely understand, he has asked to remain anonymous at this time. He has also asked that we not use certain words during the interview because he has stated he does not wish to upset MG by agreeing to this interview. We are actually using the term MG instead of the name used by the person who has stolen the balance of so many members' accounts because the person we are about to hear from asked us to do so. So, without further ado, let me introduce to you someone who we will simply refer to as JT. The following is a recorded interview with JT, who has given us permission to use it in this video. Hello, JT. It is a pleasure to speak with you today. You have already shared with me your story and have agreed to allow me to record our conversation so that we may tell your story and share it with others.
Yes, I agree, as long as we can stay away from saying names and sharing private details. I can't say that this is a pleasure to be here at this point telling my story, but I feel compelled to do so, because I feel it's the only way I can reach out to MG and hopefully get a response from him. I don't feel comfortable doing this, but I feel I have no other option at this point.
I understand. This is a big step for you, going public with your story, and we thank you for doing so. We feel it's important that victims of MG speak out and share their story so that others can hear it from the actual victims themselves. So, can you share with us your story? Please tell us how you got into the MG program, what has occurred since you joined, and how it has affected you and your family's lives.
Well, do you want the long version or the short version?
How about just giving us the basics and what you feel is the most important to share? If I feel it is necessary for you to elaborate on something, I'll let you know.
Okay, that's fine. I joined MG's program with an initial investment of $10,000 on May 29, 2019. I did so after several of my friends and online associates had joined and reported for several weeks that they'd been receiving excellent results from the program. I was at a crossroads because I didn't have the money to risk, and I needed to grow that money that I did have as fast as possible because of impending events that were going to come up later in the year that would require that I have more assets on hand than I did at the time. I was skeptical, and I knew very little about this person named MG. I did a little bit of research, and I found a few articles that claimed that he was one of the original Bitcoin adopters and was very good at investing and making predictions about Bitcoin. Based on what I was able to find out at the time and what my friends were sharing, I believed it was safe to invest with this person. My plan was to allow the balance of my account to compound each week so that it would grow as fast as possible. Once it had reached a point where I could afford to take out withdrawals on a weekly basis and still have a large enough balance overall, I would switch to weekly withdrawals. That was the plan anyways. On August 4, 2019, I was informed by MG's onboarding that the Apex level members were receiving between 16 to 24% returns on a weekly basis and had been doing so for the past 4 months. This was supposedly because the traders working the Apex accounts were much more experienced and were aggressively trading 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, using different tactics, such as arbitrage. Hearing that, I was convinced that since my account had been compounding successfully since I had originally opened it, and now I could grow it even more exponentially, if I moved it to the Apex level, it would be a wise choice to do so. At that point, on August 8, I invested another $50,000 in order to upgrade to the Apex level. Even if your account had more than $50,000 in balance, it was required that you make a new deposit of $50,000 in order to be upgraded to Apex. I didn't understand the reasons for this, but those were the requirements. I also had 2 smaller accounts that were started around the same time as upgrading to Apex. One account was started with $7,000 and the other with $8,000. These accounts were started with a combination of some of my own funds and funds from friends and associates. I don't think the specifics of these accounts is important, but I think what is important is that at one time I had 3 accounts totaling $75,000 of investment. $61,000 of it was my own money, plus $14,000 additional. Within 2 weeks after upgrading to Apex, things began to go sideways, for lack of a better word. Before I go any further, I should also mention that the person that referred me to the program was supposed to receive a referral commission for my initial investment as well as when I upgraded to Apex. They never received any referral commission for my joining the program or for upgrading to Apex. Not any at all. Along with about 20 friends and associates of mine that were also MG clients, we shared our experiences in a private Skype group. MG was also a member in this group and would pop in from time to time. On August 23, the same day I opened the 3rd account, the one that was opened in the amount of $7,000, MG and members of his team began communicating within the Skype group and privately to some individuals, telling them that I was a fraud, that I was a scammer, and that I had been siphoning money off of them and his program, and the fact that I had multiple accounts proved it. I had never been told or even been given any indication that having multiple accounts was any kind of an issue, and if I had known that it would be an issue, I would have kept everything in one account. But there was never any indication that having more than one account could be a problem, and I even had heard that others had separate accounts for separate purposes. For example, some had one account for compounding and a separate account for weekly withdrawals for paying bills and basic needs. The reason for keeping the accounts separate had everything to do with the source of the initial investments and keeping things separate, and had nothing to do with any attempt to somehow scam the system or anyone else. Honestly, I have trouble even comprehending how this could even be considered a scam, but that's what the accusation was nonetheless. As soon as I was made aware of what my friends were being told, I attempted to reach out to both MG and his staff so as to clear up any misunderstandings. At that time, I assumed that there had been some sort of a mix-up or misunderstanding, and I should be able to get it all cleared up rather simply. Now, bear in mind, up to this point, there had not been any KYC processes implemented within the MG program. When I first joined, I fully expected to go through a KYC process. However, one did not happen until after things had gone sideways. For the majority of that day, I was unable to get anyone on MG's side to respond to me or even acknowledge me. However, later that evening I was actually contacted by MG and he left several voice messages within Telegram. The first few messages were very angry, and he had nothing kind to say. As I was listening to the last of the first 3 messages, all 3 were deleted by MG, and then he left me another message saying that he would like to hear my explanation. I knew that I had not been trying to scam anyone and that it was just a mix-up, so I did my best to explain to MG why there were 3 accounts and even gave him more details about who I was, why I'd gotten into his program and how I appreciated his program and how much it was going to help my family because of my situation, which included sharing with him private details and how I had to work from home because of several physical ailments that I have, as well as having a 7-year-old daughter with special needs, and how that required for me to be available on short notice to take her to doctor appointments and to be at her school as necessary. I got the impression that he was listening to and considering what I was explaining, and he even said that he better understood things now that I explained them. The conversation lasted approximately 30 minutes or so, and I thought everything was going to be fine. I was wrong. After about 30 minutes, he changed the conversation to the subject of hacking and accused me of trying to hack his network. He said he had proof of this and became very angry at me. I was completely caught off guard by this new accusation. I am not a hacker, and I do not know how to hack anyone's network, which I assured him. Once I denied hacking his network, he got even angrier and hung up on me. I attempted to call him back at the number he had called me from, but the number was some sort of a temporary number that could not be called. Within minutes, MG went back into the group I had mentioned earlier and told them that he had heard my, quote, sob story, unquote, and how he didn't care and wasn't moved by it at all, and was still convinced that I was a scammer taking advantage of his program and my friends in that group. He went as far as having his people pull up every bit of information they could find on me, and then shared it within the group, giving my home address, my wife's name, her maiden name, information about small businesses I had licensed previously, and he did his best to make me look bad in front of these people that I had known for over 5 years. It was clearly his intent to destroy my reputation with these people and turn me into some sort of a villain, while making himself look good as some sort of a knight in shining armor. Long story short, my attempts to defend myself and his constant attacks of me continued for several weeks, and he basically said I had somehow violated a clause in a separate contract that I had never seen, much less signed or agreed to. Therefore, my money was his now. Obviously, that was not going to work for me, and I continued to reach out to him and his team, but my attempts went unanswered. About a month later, the dust seemed to have settled, and I guess he had been contacted by several of his members that knew that I was not the person that he thought I was. And on September 20, 2019, the message was conveyed to me that he now knew I was not one of the, quote, bad actors, unquote, he had thought I was. Those are his words. And I did not need to worry and that I should relax, and that my account would be reinstated within 3 days. The reason for the 3 days was because there were actual, quote, bad actors, unquote, that they were dealing with at the time, and that's how long they expected whatever it was they were doing to take. By this time, a KYC process had been implemented in the MG program, and I had completed it successfully. MG stated himself that I had been checked out and was good to go. By September 24, though, I had not received any notifications one way or the other, so I tried to reach out again, to which I received a response that all was still good to go and everything would be back on track within 24 hours because things were taking longer than expected. After that 24-hour period had come and gone and I still had not received any indication that everything was fine, I attempted to reach out to him and to his support team. Within a short period of time, I received a message from him telling me to, quote, chill the fuck out, unquote, and leave him, quote, the fuck alone, unquote. His words, not mine. He had reverted back to saying that I had done things that were wrong, and he was accusing me of identity theft and identity fraud, and was now, quote, deciding what to do with the situation, unquote. I knew neither of these things I was being accused of were true, and I figured maybe he was under a lot of stress, and I just needed to not bug him for a while, and let things settle and work themselves out. I waited another week, and then began trying to contact him again, but now all attempts to contact him and his team were ignored. I was told by others that it was not uncommon for him and his team to simply block or ignore someone entirely if they chose to do so. I didn't give up and continued to try to reach out and get messages through to MG, but I ended up going several months with absolutely no communication from his side. From September 24, 2019 until February 28, 2020, I received zero communications from MG and zero response to any of my attempts to communicate with him or his team. On February 27, 2020, I sent MG a very detailed letter that was 5 pages long, in which I reminded him of everything that had transpired up to that point. I included a table that showed how much my account should have earned by compounding since August 23, 2019 up to that point, and what I felt the balance owed to me was based upon the information I had available to me at the time. Bear in mind, I was told as an Apex member my account was expected to earn as much as 24% each week. The totals that I gave him were based upon 20%, which was an average of what I had seen between when I first opened the account on May 29th and when I was accused of being a scammer and stopped receiving weekly updates on August 23rd. The very next day, February 28th, I received a text from MG letting me know that he had received my letter and was reviewing it, and that he was very sorry because he thought I had already been taken care of a long time before. He implied that he thought my account had already been closed and I'd already been paid out. This did not make sense to me because I knew I had been attempting to communicate and inquire about the status of my account going way back to September 2019, and that I had been ignored this entire time. He then told me he would immediately make sure my account was closed and added to the queue for payout, and that I should be contacted by his team shortly. I was actually contacted almost immediately, in which I received an email telling me that my account was being closed and processed for payout, and that even though it should be paid out within 48 hours according to the contract, it would be 7 business days because they were supposedly stabilizing the Bitcoin in my account. This news was wonderful because now I thought the wrong would be righted and I'd have access to my money again. 7 days passed and I had not received any payout or further communication. I inquired several times with his team and then received a new email telling me that it was now going to take longer because they were still stabilizing the Bitcoin. The new letter went on to say that I was not allowed to tell anybody about what was going on, especially on social media and the internet, because if I did, my account would be forfeited. I believed this was inappropriate and I was being forced to remain silent for fear of losing everything, but I was hopeful that I would be paid out soon. Around that same time, I became aware of the Facebook group that MG talks about, and he claims is the reason why he lost everyone's money, supposedly. I was tempted to go on there and share my story, but I was hopeful that I didn't need to, and I was fearful that if I did, I would once again come under the attack of MG, and that he would once again tell me that my money was his for the taking. For the next few weeks, I would send emails and texts, and once in a while I'd receive a response. A couple of the responses directly from MG stated that he was working to get me my Bitcoin and that he was going to send me the amount that I had calculated and put in my letter. By then, I had heard from others that the payouts others had been receiving between August 23, 2019 and February 28, 2020 was nowhere near the 24%, or the 20% on average, and was more like 4% on average, and had dropped even as low as 0.5% on some weeks. This seemed absurd to me, considering the huge difference between what members were seeing previously and what they were now seeing in February. I knew Bitcoin's price had been fluctuating and had dropped in that time period, but the percentage change in Bitcoin price compared to the percentage change in member earnings did not correlate. Something seemed fishy, but without trading records, it could not be substantiated. Nonetheless, I recalculated the numbers I had sent MG previously, using 4% as the average between August 23rd and February 28th, and set that as the value I felt my account was then worth. Then, on March 18th, I received a phone call from MG, and we spoke for about an hour. On that call, he apologized to me profusely and told me that he knew that he had been wrong about me, and spent a great deal of time trying to explain to me the mindset that he was in the previous summer, August and September, and how I had gotten caught up in the tsunami he was dealing with at the time. Supposedly, people were trying to hack his laptop and his Bitcoin wallets and so on. He shared with me some things that he had to do in order to secure his laptop and deal with the hackers and scammers. I listened to his story, and I appreciated his effort to apologize to me. He then went on to tell me that he was going to work to arrange payment for the original amount that I had asked for in Bitcoin. At that time on the call, I told him that I had become aware that payouts had dropped considerably during the period of time I had been cut off from communication, and that I was willing to accept a much lower number based on these lowered figures. He seemed relieved by this and said I was being very reasonable and for me to send him an updated value, which I did shortly after our conversation. I continued to send and receive text messages with MG until April 9th. His last message to me on Thursday, April 9th, was that he knew I was suffering and that he would not let me down again. He told me that he was going to send me Bitcoin that day, just like he had told me on the previous Friday that he was going to but hadn't. He never did send the Bitcoin that he promised on the 3rd and again on the 9th, and I have not received any communication from him or Bitcoin since.
Wow, that's incomprehensible and horrible. I'm very sorry you went through all that. Would you be willing to share with us the letter you sent to him, as well as other communications between the two of you?
Not at this time. That's private, and I would prefer to respect the privacy of those communications, as I would hope he would do the same. I've saved everything, of course, but I intend to keep those actual communications private unless I am compelled to do otherwise, or I am left with no other options.
I understand. Can you share with us how this has affected you and your family?
Well, I've been completely devastated by all of this. It has basically destroyed my marriage and ruined me financially. My credit has dropped over 200 points because all my credit cards are maxed out and I am unable to make payments. In March, we were evicted from the home that we were living in previously because we were behind on our lease by 3 months. My bank account is constantly overdrawn, and I've been charged hundreds upon hundreds of dollars in late fees and penalties. Really more like thousands of dollars. I can't even keep track of it any longer. I'm unable to pay any bills now, and even though we were fortunate enough to find a place to move into after being evicted from the last place, we're not going to be able to make the rent in June. Nor will we be able to pay the utilities that are due now. Those will get shut off before long. So basically, we're completely destitute and about to become homeless, and I can attribute all of this directly to MG and what he's done to me and my family. It's completely cruel and unjustified what has happened, and I don't understand how a decent person could do this to another. I've made MG completely aware of the situation time and time again, and even though he has promised on multiple occasions to pay me what I am owed, he's not done so.
So, you're still owed 100% of what you invested and what your account earned over the last 11.5 months. Is that correct?
Actually, I received one small payment that is equal to about 20% of what I put in, or about 3% of what he owes me overall. I guess you could say I received a single weekly payout over the last 50 weeks. I've heard him say that people who are running the Facebook group and others that are complaining have received over 100% payout of their initial investment, or something along those lines. Honestly, I don't understand the meaning of this statement, considering that when the program began a year ago, people were receiving over 20% each week, which meant that within 5 weeks, a person could expect to double their investment and then do so again and again and again. That's what people were being promised and sold on, and that's why people were joining. For people to now be chastised and called greedy because they have earned 100% profit as if they shouldn't expect to earn any more than that, I just don't get it. Either way, that doesn't even apply to me. I have not received back anything close to what I put in. I should have received what was owed to me way back in August or September of last year, and at the very latest at the end of February, beginning of March of this year.
I agree. Based on the timing of August or September of last year, it sounds like you were one of the very first people to have their accounts taken by MG with no legitimate reason. Why haven't you spoken out before now?
Those friends and colleagues that were in that Skype group, they knew and saw what had happened, at least back when this first happened. But I haven't gone public because I guess I was afraid of coming under further attack by MG, as well as clinging on to the hope that any day now I would hear from him and he would send me what I was owed. And if I made the mistake of speaking out, that would all be put at risk. I didn't want to jeopardize what little chance for hope I had. I also didn't want to put others at risk. Early on, he made it abundantly clear that my friends that were in the program were at risk of having their accounts taken as well if they dare speak up on my behalf or somehow contradict his accusations that he was making. At least 3 or 4 of them were told directly by him to either stay out of it or their accounts would be taken too. I had several friendships and relationships basically ruined by this because people began distancing themselves from me because they were fearful of what could happen to themselves. Guilty by association, I guess, even though I wasn't guilty of anything. I understood this and chose to basically remain under the radar, so to speak, hoping that I could get the problem resolved without causing any kind of backlash on those that I knew that were still in his program.
So, why have you agreed to tell us your story now?
I'm speaking to you now because I'm hoping that this message will be heard by MG and he will reach out and contact me. Maybe I'm clinging on to the ridiculous hope that he's not intentionally avoiding me and it's just a situation of him being distracted and busy. I know how absurd that sounds at this point, but I'm still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Even now, after all this?
Yeah, I guess so. Pretty naive of me, right? I'm no longer receiving any responses to emails or texts, and I feel like I'm right back to where I was in September of last year, sending communications but not receiving any back. I cannot go another 6 months without receiving communications again. My family's about to become homeless. I can't even pay for the food that they need or gas to put in the car any longer. Basic necessities are quickly becoming beyond our reach. It's horrible. My children shouldn't have to go through this. MG knows how to get a hold of me. He has my phone number, he has my email, he knows my Telegram account, he even knows my home address and IP address. He's told me and others that he knows and sees everything. So he knows how to get a hold of me, but for reasons I don't understand, he just chooses not to.
If you could speak directly to MG right now, what would you say to him?
I would ask him to please do the right thing. He has apologized for misjudging me and accusing me of the things that he did. That's fine, and I appreciate that, but it doesn't pay the bills. I would ask for him to please deliver on his promises, to return my investment and what he owes me, and not let my family be put through this any longer. We will be forced into a homeless shelter and probably become a broken family soon. How can he live with himself knowing he's destroyed my family? MG, you have a family, and unless you're cold and without human emotion, you must be able to relate to what I'm saying. Would you want your family to go through this? You know I have 2 small children, and one of those children suffers from an affliction very similar to what you've lived with for a long time. It is partially because of this, what you have in common with my daughter, that I can relate and empathize with you. Perhaps that is the reason why I've been so patient and have tried to be understanding of your actions rather than accuse you of willfully hurting me and my family. But you are a grown man, and you have the ability to make the right choices, whereas my daughter is still young and is still maturing and does not have as much choice in her actions. I can forgive her when she lashes out and says or does hurtful things, but at this point, I don't feel I can continue to forgive you. You know the situation my family is in, and that it is directly tied to your decision back on August 23rd of last year to essentially take my account without cause, knowing that it was all of my savings and everything I had and that my family needed it to survive. You've been promising me since September 23rd of last year, over 7.5 months ago, that you were going to take care of this, and still I wait. You know that you have not only the ability, but the obligation to do the right thing and show some compassion and fix this. You've called me your friend and you've even referred to us as family. If that's how you truly feel, now is the time to show that you mean it. That's all I have to say at this time.
Wow, you really said a lot there. I hope that MG hears this and contacts you and does the right thing. Please, hang in there. I'll be praying for you and sending good thoughts your way.
Thank you. God bless.
If you are a victim of MG and would like to share your story or have information that could be useful in an investigation to find the truth about MG and recover victim assets, or if you'd like to help JT out in some way, please send an email to starktruthtv@gmail.com with the subject MG Wipeout. Thank you.